Hello, everybody. This is the Two Pointers Podcast, a podcast where two childhood best friends, myself, Trevor, and my co-host Josh, talk all things hoops. We'll analyze and debate news and what's happening in the world of basketball today. Today's episode of the Two Pointers Podcast is sponsored by Crack Technician Services. This awesome up-and-coming tech repair company can be your go-to for any tech repair service. From screen repair to battery replacement to speakers and so much more, they can fix it all. It is run by my good friend, Mr. Jonathan Hardy. You can inquire about a service by sending a message on Instagram at cracked_technician_services or by way of email, cracktechnicianservices@gmail.com. Again, that's cracked_technician services on Instagram and crackedtechnicianservices@gmail.com. Two Pointers Podcast listeners get an exclusive discount code. You can use TPP at checkout for 10% off your first service. Now on to today's episode.
Long run out by Kobe Bryant. Behind him. Oh! What did I just see?
You just saw what Kobe does best, and that's bring people to their feet.
Welcome back to the Two Pointers Podcast. We're coming back to you live on a day that is very unfortunate to all of us as basketball fans. But we also wanted to just do this just as a memorial, as a tribute to none other than Mr. Kobe Bryant. Today marking a year since this unfortunate passing. We want to just go through and just highlight some of our favorite moments as fans from the Two Pointers Podcast, Josh and I both. But I also want specifically from my point of view as well, just as for those who might not have listened before, and this is their first time listening, I am a diehard Lakers fan. I have grown up a diehard Lakers fan, and I am one only because of him. I literally watched him growing up as a child with my aunt and with my uncle and my grandma and grandpa watching him. I watched him growing up. I really enjoyed it, and I was like, this is going to be awesome being a fan of him for a long time. And we'll highlight some of our favorite moments, and we'll actually, ironically, we figured this out as we were starting to record. We'll go through his career just as a whole. Just some of the key moments that really shaped his Hall of Fame career and life. A couple of those being his draft and the draft night trade and all that stuff. The 81-point game, his game winner against the Suns, and then a 60-point final game and poetic end to a career. Before we transition over to the draft, just for maybe someone who's not a basketball fan who's listening to this, or maybe somebody who doesn't realize the type of career he had. Top 10 player all time in most people's debates and lists, played 1,346 games, averaged 25 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game. He did all these great things. Hall of Famer, 2-time gold medalist, 18-time All-Star, 2-time scoring champion, 5-time NBA champion, 15-time All-NBA, 12 times All-Defense, All-Rookie team, 4-time All-Star Game MVP, 2-time Finals MVP, and then that illustrious 2008 NBA MVP. All those aside, not only was he a great player, but he was a great author, Academy Award winner, coach, friend, and to me, most importantly, father.
With the 13th pick in the 1996 NBA Draft, the Charlotte Hornets select Kobe Bryant from Lower Merion High School in Pennsylvania.
So after hearing that clip with Kobe getting drafted in 1996, the first thing that comes to mind for me is that it just doesn't feel right almost for a guy who his entire career, he's so synonymous with the Los Angeles Lakers. Kobe Bryant is as synonymous with the Los Angeles Lakers as Magic Johnson or Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or any other player in Lakers history, in a time where we have players who often switch teams and move around the NBA. A guy like Kobe, who spent his entire 20-year career being one of the greatest basketball players of all time, and spending that whole career not counting a handful of hours on draft night when he was selected by Charlotte, is just something we don't see anymore. And it was a testament to Kobe Bryant's just intense loyalty and love for the Lakers franchise that he had. As a Charlotte Hornets fan, I've always had an interesting perspective on Kobe Bryant being drafted. There's a lot of people who think or focus in on Charlotte a lot as the team that really made a mistake in the draft day trade and moving Kobe to Los Angeles. And I think they did. But having looked back at it, I feel like there were a lot of mistakes made in that draft because of the 12 other teams that also passed on Bryant before being selected, and the fact that the Charlotte Hornets only selected Kobe Bryant in order to trade him for Vlade Divac from LA. There was a lot of, I feel like, misunderstanding these days on what happened that night, because there were it was in a time before the media was able to like accurately report that teams were making the draft day trades, that they had traded the pick and they were now selecting for a new franchise. But the Lakers were able to kind of move up in that draft to pick through Charlotte at 13 to select Kobe Bryant. Jerry West saw something in Kobe Bryant that a lot of other teams somehow, some way missed. I just don't understand, even to this day, how 13 franchises could possibly miss on Kobe Bryant's talent.
I want to highlight the draft specifically to your point. That draft was loaded. It's arguably one of the greatest of all time. It's up there with 2003, 2004, and some others as well. It is the 50th draft in NBA history, which was obviously a monumental moment for the league. It included guys like, and I'm not going to shortlist any of these guys, Allen Iverson, Marcus Camby, Sharif Abdur-Rahim, Stephon Marbury, Ray Allen are your top 5 picks there. Also include Antoine Walker, Kobe, of course, at 13, like you mentioned, and 12 other teams passing on him. Peja Stojakovic, Steve Nash, Tony Delk, Jermaine O'Neal, Zydrunas Ilgauskas, and many others. This was a loaded draft class. This draft class was awesome. And it goes to show that just there was really 5 guys that a lot of teams saw. I mean, there was Hall of Famers ahead of him, obviously, in AI and Ray Allen, and obviously one behind him as well, and Steve Nash. But it was a good draft. It was a very good draft in the sense that there might have been a couple of guys that you could argue were worth drafting at the time. But looking back after all these careers are now finally over, I think we can all agree. I think that if you redraft this, he goes 1 every time. But I think you mentioned the Charlotte Hornets angle that a lot of people miss as well. You mentioned Jerry West making it very clear he wanted him. He did. He made that so clear that he partnered with his agent at the time, Arn Tellem, and made sure that he limited his draft workouts. He made sure that he didn't work out with as many people as possible. He didn't even work out with the Hornets. That's part of the point you make with where he's going to more than likely be dealt. And we call it a draft night trade. Of course, we did find out later it took 2 weeks for the deal to go down with the Vlade Divac situation and the retirement threatening. But that roster, not only did they not draft him and didn't work him out, they had a roster who they actually this same year drafted Tony Delk, Muggsy Bogues, BJ Armstrong, Vernon Maxwell, Del Curry, Glenn Rice. Those are just a few guys that would have played ahead of him. He even said himself he's not going to get a lot of playing time. He was also quoted in 2015 saying that he was really excited to play for Coach Cowens, but then when Cowens made it clear that he didn't want him, from that point on, I think we figured out that, in his own words, he quickly transitioned from a smiley kid to killer instinct. And I think that's where you're going to hear me, people who follow me on Twitter from the show or friends that we know or my family know that I try my best to live by this Mamba mentality. I think that's truly where it started for him, and what kickstarted such an illustrious career was having that killer instinct from somebody, not creating that chip on that shoulder. That Mamba mentality eventually would be the name of his book. I mentioned author in the opening sequence there, but this to me is really important that we cover from the beginning and talking about his life and his career, because I think it's really what kickstarted a really, really awesome career.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the way I think of it is Kobe Bryant seeing and understanding on that draft night that 12 teams not only passed on him or thought they had something better in the players that they selected, albeit for however great those players were. It's a testament to Kobe Bryant's incredible career that no one argues about who the best player in that draft was to this day, even with guys like Allen Iverson going at number 1. But that even the team that picked Kobe Bryant, like his draft night, was getting picked by Charlotte only to find out that, as in Kobe's words put it, they had no use for him and that they were going to immediately trade him away. It just creates a massive chip on someone's shoulder I think part of what may go into explaining why Kobe fell so far on the draft board that night, he was just the second high school player taken since 1975 at that point in time. No high school players had gone since 75 until the year before when the Timberwolves selected Kevin Garnett. So a lot of teams were super wary about taking players straight out of high school. And it's probably would go into explaining how a guy of his quality could go at number 13. Yeah, I think it was just, at the end of the day, it was a incredibly smart move by Jerry West and by the Los Angeles Lakers to bring in one of the best talents in the history of the NBA, who will go on to be synonymous with the words Los Angeles Lakers, bring 5 championships to the Lakers organization, and become one of the greatest basketball players of all time.
Kobe Bryant, 28 for 46 from the field. This would be 18 for 20 from the line, and an 81-point game.
81-point game, man! What a moment in such an awesome career. It seems ridiculous almost that we are starting with an 81-point game when, like you had mentioned in the segment prior, at the end of the segment prior, that he won 3 championships before this moment. So it would obviously with Shaq and that awesome Lakers team that three-peated. I can't believe that's where we're starting. But then again, we wanted to highlight some of our favorite moments and some of the coolest moments. 3 championships obviously is the goal. Get championships is the goal of a player like him. That's what he always wanted, was to win a title or win multiple. But we're starting with the 81-point game. That was another reason too, is that this is really where either of us and a lot of people that may be listening, a lot of our friends of our similar age, that where we really started watching basketball was around this time. January 2nd, 2006, put up 81 on the Toronto Raptors. He went 28-46 from the field, 7 of 13 from 3, and 18 of 20 from the line. An interesting fact that I found out that I did not know, one of my favorite things about this pod that I was learning as I was getting ready for it, was just researching what's going on and what we didn't know. This was the first and only professional game in his NBA career that his grandmother had seen him play live. I couldn't believe that when I read that. I had to fact check it. So
you said the only one?
The only game, the first and only professional game that his grandmother saw him play live.
Man, imagine if she'd gone to more games.
Right. Right. Hey, maybe he'd have done it. Maybe he'd have broken world's record. You never know. Obviously, the second highest scoring record of all time in a single game. Truly, just I think, in my opinion, his most shining achievement, or one of the most shining achievements, in my opinion, of his illustrious career.
I mean, I feel like you can forget the almost part. The 81-point game is that moment in time when Kobe Bryant goes from a great basketball player. And I think it's important, that you said that before, he had won 3 championships as a major piece of the Los Angeles Lakers team, along with Shaquille O'Neal. And he goes from, at that game in 2006, from this great NBA basketball player to this legendary player who has done something that no one else other than Wilt Chamberlain, and Chamberlain doing it almost in a way that kind of seems like folklore now, looking back at Chamberlain's incredible game. Bryant goes from, great player to legend at that point in time. What I found interesting that I learned that I think I hadn't realized before is I had assumed in seeing he scored 81 points in that game. Oh, the Lakers must have absolutely dominated in that game. It seems like a lot of what Kobe's game was spurred on by the fact the Lakers were losing at halftime. At halftime, the Toronto Raptors led the Los Angeles Lakers 63-49 in the Staples Center. Bryant was already having an incredible game because he had 26 points at the end of the first half, which you see that now. 26 points is an incredible game. 26 points is a ridiculous half. And to know that he was only really about maybe 30% of the way onto what he would end up doing in that game is outrageous. Kobe would then come out in the third quarter, score more points in the third quarter than he had in the entire first half, with 27 on 11 of 15 shooting. He only missed 4 times. throughout the entirety of that quarter, to pull the Lakers only into a 6-point lead, continuing to maintain needing Kobe Bryant to continue to carry the team entering the fourth, and he would score more points than he did in the third quarter, in the fourth quarter with 28, to finish on a 55-point second half, which, again, looking back, 55 points is a game that gets talked about on ESPN all day the next day if a player accomplishes that for an entire game. And Kobe Bryant was so incredible at the game of basketball that he did that in the second half. Just going to let that sit there. Oh, it's amazing. I remember waking up that morning. So I was 7 years old. I was just starting to understand what sports were. And I remember waking up that morning and sitting in front of the TV and seeing the highlight package of that game on SportsCenter, really just playing over and over again, because there was clearly nothing more important to talk about than that had happened. And I remember the highlight package being almost like 5 minutes long. Like, if you think of like a normal game's highlight package is like a minute and a half, maybe a couple minutes, it covers the game. And it was just like this extremely long highlight package of Bryant being almost unable to miss at any point in time. One of the most incredible things I've ever seen. It's one of the first memories I have of just being amazed when watching someone play basketball.
Yeah, you mentioned a really good point. First of all, you're dating us when you say that, because for those listeners who might not know, we are, if they can do the math on looking up the year. But I too obviously remember waking up the next day and being like, "Holy cow!" And obviously, I was a fan. I had been a fan around that time. I can't always, and I hate myself for this. I can't pin a time verbatim where I was like, "That's my guy." Ironically enough, I think it was around it must have been right after that third championship, maybe. But you mentioned the 5-minute clip of, just the fact that he had 81 points. Of course, that highlight's going to be a lot longer, right? But he was hot, man. He was hot you mentioned missing only 4 times in that third quarter. I truly it was such an amazing performance, in the sense that, like, you see all these highlight packages afterwards, and it's, probably one of the most searched ones on YouTube, and from his career's sake. But it truly is something that we may never see again. I think with the league's current scoring, and I don't want to talk too much about the current league in a tribute like this, but the league and the 3-point rate, somebody's going to probably beat it, and somebody very well may beat Wilt's record. I know you said it was something of almost folklore at this point. There was no 3-pointers at the time. And just to show you how versatile he truly was, 28 of 46 from the field, like I said, 7 of 13 from 3, and only missing 2 shots from the free throw line. That's, just totally efficient. And I'll bring this up just as showing how many points he truly shot from multiple different places on the floor. If you didn't know, for those of you out there as basketball fans, or maybe they were too young to remember or see this, he scored the most points on a guy named Jalen Rose that they very ever so famously, I don't even remember the ad or what the ad was about, but there was an awesome advertisement. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. Just look up Kobe Bryant, Jalen Rose commercial, where he mentions how he wants 81 olives in his martini. Awesome, hilarious attitude that they both had towards this moment. He scored the most points on Jalen that night. He had 18 on Jalen specifically. After going back and doing some research, I did not know that. I learned that as well. But yeah, just truly just something awesome that we got to see. It really, for me, like I said, can't pinpoint a time as a fan, but starting wise, but this really was the first moment I truly remember. And I'm like, this guy's awesome, and great choice I think I made.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not sure about if I ever think that someone's really going to meet that 81 points. The closest since 2006 anyone's ever gotten was Devin Booker's 70-point game in 2017. And that still being like 11 points back. And he played less minutes. He played more minutes than Bryant to get to that point in that game. It's just one of those things that's going to be, as all incredible games are, it's going to be borderline impossible to ever reach again. And I think it's a good thing. It's one of those incredible moments that I don't think anyone who saw it's ever going to forget. And it's going to continually be a moment that's looked back on to remember how incredible Kobe Bryant was as a basketball player and as a competitor, because as we mentioned in the first part about when he was being drafted, that it set him up to go to that killer instinct. I don't think that Kobe ends up reaching that 81-point mark if it's not for his killer instinct is going, because the Lakers need him in order to win that game. They need him to reach that next level because they're struggling in the first half of that game. And the incredible competitor that he is steps up and reaches that point. One of the stats I wanted to look at was there's a comparison on the shooting totals toward Wilt Chamberlain. And I think it just comes down to the only reason that Bryant is not able to reach Chamberlain's mark in that game is just field goal attempts. Because Kobe Bryant was shooting a better percentage at 60% from the field overall in that game than Chamberlain did. And he wouldn't even need to reach the 63 field goal attempts that Wilt had because he was shooting over 50% from three. So, I mean, every other shot he's taking from back there is going in. A few more field goal attempts, he would have reached that mark. But as for if anybody else is ever going to do it again, I don't know. I mean, you can never say never in sports, but I'm not sure that we'll ever see that in the NBA. I'm not sure if I ever want us to see that again. It's one of those records that you don't want to be broken.
Just as a selfish fan, I agree with you. I don't want to see it broken. My final point here, as now someone, myself and you included, as two people who now cover sports and have an opinion out there for the world to hear, I'm going to make a clarification point in case maybe a friend of ours or somebody hears this and listens to a point I made prior a few weeks ago after we talked about Steph's 62-point game. I don't want to get flamed for it, so I'm going to clarify. Let me go on record and say that I said that my favorite 60-point plus or 50-point plus was Devin Booker's 70. Shame on me. And you guys can't hear Josh laughing right now at me, but I'm going to go on record and say shame on me for forgetting. In the moment, I thought of just more recency bias. Devin Booker, being such a big fan of him, I see a lot of the similarities in them. To be clear, I'm not comparing them in any way possible, but Kobe was instrumental in Devin Booker's career, him learning from him, etc. But let me just make sure I put that out there that obviously this is my favorite 50 or 60 point and above game, but that Devin Booker one was cool. I still wanted to at least give it credit in that episode. Funny how all things come full circle. And then this is my final point on this. What an awesome moment. And I'm never going to forget it. Like you said, I don't want to see it broken again.
They'd love to get it into Nash's hands, and they do. Ball knocked away, stolen by Parker.
Here it is.
Here comes George to Kobe Bryant. Bryant inside. It's good. It's good. Tie game. Walton can tip it. Bryant with the save.
Oh, you got to get a shot here.
Final seconds. Bryant for the win. Bang!
What a buzzer beater. What an awesome play. Personally, why we bring this up, or why listeners may be going, why are these two buffoons talking about this random buzzer beater of a series that they actually ended up losing? The Lakers did. They lost 3-1, or the Suns came back from 3-1. But personally, for me, as like we said, we're highlighting this as fans, this is my personal favorite moment. I remember it. It was awesome. It's the same year, of course, as the 81-point game. I do remember this one. This probably was really the moment. I mentioned how I didn't really maybe have a moment. This was the one I was like, oh my gosh. And I just was so excited. I barely slept that night. And then, of course, like I said, losing 4-3, that hurts to the Suns team. But what an awesome moment. It's one of my favorite. I do want to highlight something that I found out going through this that I think is interesting. This week, a player on that team, or two players on that team, had an interview with each other, and it was an Ringer NBA show pod that Logan Murdoch and Raja Bell, of course, Raja being a guy that I will talk about in just a moment. They interviewed Raja's former teammate, Sean Marion, and he had some interesting things to say about this series that I did not know, that I thought was awesome. He said, and I quote, they wanted to play the Lakers, or we wanted to play the Lakers, and we were ready for them because we had beaten them 3 out of 4 in the regular season. Oh boy, did they not see them coming. That 3-1, obviously these game tying shots and game winning shot to put them down 3-1. I don't think they were ready for that and ready for that. This Lakers team was good. I mean, this was between titles, but they were still a great team. Eventually, obviously, would go on to win one in 2009, but they were a thorn in the Suns' side, and the Suns maybe take them to 7. And just obviously, I'm not going to be too speculative, but maybe taking them to 7 might have ran them down into the ground, and maybe that's why they couldn't get it done in the Western Conference Finals. But just an interesting point to make about the finding that out from Sean Marion this week. One more thing I wanted to mention to you too, Josh, that I thought was cool. Just the fact that to me, there's so many buzzer beaters we could have talked about, but just truly what this one meant to the Lakers organization as a whole. But like I said, it is a shortcoming at the end of the result. But I think for me, just like I said, I already mentioned it was a personal favorite, but he hit it over Raja Bell and Boris Diaw, who were tasked with guarding him throughout that series. I think it was really neat to see, going back and watching it and just reliving that moment. Really, really fun. Just really, really awesome moment to see. I'm like, I don't have anything to say otherwise. Like, there's some great moments out there for him, buzzer beater wise, ones against Dwayne Wade, other ones against the Suns, the Kings as well. But this one to me just really highlighted truly just the fact that he was able to tie the game after that Push Parker steal, which I mentioned Smush Parker, but Kobe was very clear how he felt about Smush and the fact that he stole that, and that led to the game tire and then eventually the game winner. What a fun, eventful overall story that I think is one of my, like I said, is my favorite buzzer beater and career moment.
The Lakers down 1. Will Kobe give them one last gamer? Bryant on the move with the jumper. He got it! My! 58 points! And the Lakers lead! And the Lakers close out Kobe Bryant's career with a win and one of the great farewell performances in any sport at any time. Authored by one of the NBA's all-time greats, Kobe Bryant, 60 points, 23 in the fourth quarter of his farewell game.
And finally, one of the probably most recent, legendary moments in Kobe's career was that his final game as a Los Angeles Lakers, final game as a professional basketball player, he gets to score 60 points in the Staples Center in front of his home crowd, and just so many people coming and watching and paying attention to that game. It was truly a storybook ending to a basketball career that I don't think could have been written any better. I remember watching that and just like being amazed at seeing like an incredible career come to an end in such an incredible fashion, especially after it had been such a tough year for the Lakers and for Bryant with LA, as he kind of like struggled through adversity and worked to like really teach and help train up these young guys that the Lakers had on their team at the time. It was a great moment and a great tribute to Bryant and how great he was to go out there and score 60 points as his career came to an end.
Yeah, overall, just not only just in his sake, but as well as just for the NBA as a whole, what a legendary night. On the same night, of course, as the Warriors breaking the wins record, going 73-9. Just a legendary, awesome performance in the sense that we don't get to see many career-ending type moments that are so just instrumental in how these guys' careers are shaped. The one that comes to mind in our lifetime is obviously Peyton Manning going out on a Super Bowl. That I think that they're both players held on such a high standard and such a high, people have such a high good opinion of them. I think it's really neat that they both had that storybook type ending. And also what a star-studded night. I can't talk about the 60-point game if I don't talk about how many people were truly in attendance. Like, just just stars that were in attendance. Just to name a few, Jay-Z was there, David Beckham, Adam Levine, Kanye West, Kendrick Lamar, Shaq, obviously, former teammate, Lamar, former teammate, Snoop Dogg, and of course it wouldn't be a Lakers game without Jack Nicholson. It would not be a Lakers game that he's been there since the Showtime days. I don't even want to debate this at this moment because this man could live another 30 years for all we know, but it's just going to be interesting to see who takes his seats. It just, obviously he's been there through all these moments. He's been there through all these things. It's just going to be like really, I'm glad that he was obviously a part of it. This was so awesome to see. And man, what a fun night to actually, of course, get the 60, but also get the win.
I think it's like you've seen, the Lakers have always kind of been Hollywood's team. They're in LA. It's the greatest show to come watch. Like you talked about the Showtime Lakers, it's exciting. You want to come see the Lakers play. And with Kobe Bryant playing his last game, it was appointment viewing. I mean, it was something to think about now with you mentioning it. Like, the Golden State Warriors set the record for regular season wins that night. And they were probably, or most definitely, the secondary story that night. And it's just outrageous. Like, that there was the incredible accomplishment there, but everyone stopped in that moment, recognizing how pivotal a moment it was to watch and celebrate Kobe Bryant's final game as a basketball player. That a 73 win team setting an NBA record that, as we talk about NBA records that seem unbreakable, is kind of pushed to the secondary storyline that night. One of the funny parts of the game that I remember from that is remembering Shaquille O'Neal, probably being one of Bryant's most legendary teammates, talking about after the game that he had jokingly asked Kobe and told him that you better go out there and score 50 that night. Instead, Kobe goes out and scores 60s just so that he could one-up him.
That Mamba mentality. That's really what it is, man. One thing that I will say, just as I wish I had more. We could do 2 to 3 hours on this topic or just him as a whole. But my final point just is like, there's no storybook ending to this story. There really isn't. I'm not going to be super somber here. I really don't want this pod to be remembered that way. But it's the moment that I think it's the most rewatched. It's the most replayed. It's the most talked about every time either a story comes out about him, or obviously it was the first thing that they replayed on ESPN the week of the tragic event, as well as within weeks prior, or weeks after. I remember watching it with a good friend of mine, Lakers fan as well, Eddie. Him and I sat down and watched it together in our jerseys. It tore me to pieces, but God, I mean, I at least got to watch the moment with somebody who I know was a fan because of him. It was really neat. It was, like I said, it's the moment that I've rewatched the most. It's the moment that I've rewatched, obviously studying for this pod, but also just, I'm probably going to rewatch the entire game as a whole, just to make sure that I do my due diligence to make sure that I watch what a storybook ending to a storybook career. I don't have anything else to say other than that. This has been an awesome, just awesome for me as a fan, obviously, and being able to talk through and kind of go through, and you get to experience this with me, getting to hear it from your perspective as a fan who wasn't a fan of the Lakers or wasn't a fan of Kobe, maybe in the sense that you're not a fan of him or his team, but this has been awesome. And I'm happy we've been able to do this as much as I can be, for the fact that I hate we're even doing this. Anything you have to say?
One, I want to be clear that I am a fan of Kobe Bryant. I'm not going to lie and say I was a fan of the Lakers, but I am a fan of great basketball players. And even with me never wanting to root for the Los Angeles Lakers at any point in time, I loved watching an awesome basketball player play. And so it was kind of one of those, a guy was so good on a team, you have to like him, regardless of how you feel about the team. But I mean, man, just the way I'm always going to remember Kobe Bryant is he defined an era in basketball. I think there was a point in time when Michael Jordan retired the second time in 1996, that there was kind of a hole left behind of a star that defined who the NBA was, who professional basketball was. And I think it was fitting that that season when Jordan retired was Bryant's rookie, or is his second year, I think, in the NBA. And Kobe Bryant would really step up and fill that void. He became the basketball player to define the next generation after the retirement of Michael Jordan, which are ginormous shoes to fill. And the fact that Kobe Bryant made a stamp of his legacy on that completely, stepping up to the challenge completely. He defines the late 90s, the early to mid, all the way into the late 2000s, almost the entire decade of the 2000s. The first basketball player I'm going to think of is Kobe Bryant.
I know I mentioned I had nothing else to say, but I do want to respond to an awesome point you made. Generational talent, generational legacy. The NBA to me has always been, even you go back and you look at the guys from back in the Minneapolis days for the Lakers, or you look at the Celtics and Russell winning 11 titles. It's a storybook league. It's a storybook, like I mentioned a moment ago. It's full of guys that you're going to be. I'm going to show my kids highlights of him. Obviously, I'm going to show them highlights of even the Showtime teams. I hope I'm going to cross my fingers and hope my kids, if I have anything to do with their Lakers fans, I'm going to let them pick their own path. But I hope I can show them. I hope I can show them Kobe.
It's fine.
Yeah, no, I hope they pick the right. It is what it is. They can do what they want, but I'm super excited to be able to share such an illustrious and generational talent and career in life, and just what he's taught me and what he's just been able to just bring to the table for basketball fans as a whole. You can think of just the laundry list, and I'll stop digressing, or I'll digress after this. But you can just think of the laundry list of players that were motivators to him, or that were motivated by him. Obviously, Devin Booker, like I mentioned earlier, Kevin Durant, LeBron. They all watched him growing up. Like these guys, you saw the passing of the torch. You saw the passing of the torch from LeBron to Kobe, or from Kobe to LeBron. Sorry, that's just all over the place here. But it's going to be something, like I said, he's going to be remembered forever. To me, my final thing, truly, hopefully here, but would be, I hope he's remembered not only as such a great player, but all those things I listed at the beginning. He's taught me a lot just as a person, just as a man. And what a career. Well, thank you all for listening. Fittingly enough, or awesomely enough, this is the first pod we're doing as a team here where we have hit 200 downloads. And I just want to say thank you. Yeah, emotional aside, I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the 200. It's just this has been an awesome experience so far, doing this pod, and I appreciate every single person, as well as you out, Josh as well, for just listening and giving us feedback and continuing to 5-star and share it. Anything else you have to say before we close out?
I hope everyone listening has just enjoyed going through and reminiscing on great moments from a great basketball career the way we have. This has probably been, it's a podcast that's very unique for me to record, and I've just enjoyed being able to go back and talk through some of these great moments and remember back. I hope you all have enjoyed listening, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
This has been the 2 Pointers Podcast. I'm Trevor.
And I'm Josh. And we will see you soon.
What can I say? Mamba out.